Imagine it. The year is 1845. The Flagstaff War begins with 700 Maori marching and destroying a British flagpole in response to them breaking a treaty from 5 years prior. The first refractor telescope is used in Ireland, and a dumb drunkard smashes a vase in a museum that's 2,000 years old in England. Self-rising flour is patented, as is rubber bands. 1,600 people in China die in a theater from a fire. And a fire destroys 1,500 buildings in Canada. The very first picture of the sun is taken. A magic theater opens up in Paris. An expedition to find the Northwest Passage leaves England and never returns. A railway opens up for the first time through Arnhem in the Netherlands. And an English chemist, Michael Faraday, discovers the Faraday effect. Stateside, Edgar Allan Poe publishes The Raven. Florida becomes a state, and 1,000 buildings are destroyed in Pittsburgh during a fire. A whaling ship is the very first to enter Japanese waters in 2 centuries. Macon B. Fallon and Robert Morris Jr. are the first African Americans to open up a law practice, and Henry David Thoreau moves on Walden Pond, and Andrew Jackson passes away. And his parrot is such a colorful speaker, if you know what I mean, that he had to be kicked out of the funeral. People were offended. And no, that doesn't mean that's the last we're going to hear of Jack. And finally, the last of the Jacksonians take his spot in the nation's highest position. Remember in the last video when I said Tyler replaced his entire cabinet with conservative Southerners who were dedicated to the institution of slavery, and that when they left the presidency, they all went to the Democratic Party? Well, a big influence these days is Andrew Jackson, and he saw something that in Americans that he thought the Democrat Party, whom he was a huge influence on at the time, could really capitalize on, and that idea was manifest destiny, which is essentially the belief that America should stretch from sea to shining sea. Polk was one of the people, I'm sure there were others, that looped in Texas and New Mexico, California, all the way up to Oregon. Like, they wanted the whole West Coast. And with Andrew Jackson's influence, that is how the Democratic Party won the nomination and won the presidency. And speaking of incredible movement over distances, it's around this time that the Irish potato famine is wreaking havoc on the Irish population, and people are getting out, and they're getting out. A lot of the Irish are coming here, and that's a whole other thing about discrimination and poor treatment. But for now, Polk uses that sort of as a way to help gain support for the manifest destiny. We needed more space, right? In other weird situations, remember how I said in the last video that holding off on annexing Texas was going to come back to bite the next president? Well, here he is. Tyler signed, right before he left office, the bill to annex Texas. And immediately, Mexico severed all diplomatic ties with the United States. But before he could even deal with the Mexico situation, Polk had to deal with another crisis up north. There was still a border issue, and it was Canada, British, and Russia, essentially, Russian Alaska. So they were trying to figure out really where it is, and with a lot of negotiation. There were plenty of Americans who just wanted to battle it out. But luckily, Polk and everyone else involved was not interested in another conflict like that. So he was able to negotiate for the 49th parallel, therefore making that our official northern boundary. He was excited about the success of that negotiation, and wanted to parlay that over to Mexico. It just wasn't going to happen, though. Polk offered $20 million for California and New Mexico. The leaders in Mexico would not even entertain the messengers who brought it to them. So he decides to send General Zachary Taylor, a name we'll hear again, to kind of put the pressure on a little bit. That didn't really work the way that Polk probably hoped it would work. It just caused another conflict. The British and Canadians may have been wary of war, but Mexico surely wasn't. When Zachary Taylor came over and was trying to work his magic, they saw it as an attack. So they literally attacked back. And that caused Congress to go and declare war against Mexico. The United States sent troops and invaded Mexico City and kind of just sat there for a while waiting for them to say fine, which eventually they begrudgingly accepted $15 million for California and New Mexico. Following all the drama, there were some positive things, like Iowa and Wisconsin became states, and the Smithsonian Institute was founded. And now that California was an American state, and settlers decided to go west, and that's when settler James Marshall found gold. And here begins the California Gold Rush. During Polk's presidency, the literal landscape of America changed. And when he lost the bid for re-election and left the office, he actually just passed away a few months later. And next up, we'll hear more about that general I mentioned earlier as he becomes President Zachary Taylor.